I'm Shaun Noorian. I'm the founder and CEO of Empower Pharmacy and Empower Pharma. We're a 503A compounding pharmacy as well as a 503B outsourcing facility. And I'll get into differences between those two types of organizations shortly. But before I get into my company, get a little bit into myself and how I got started. So, my parents emigrated to this country in 1979 during the Iranian Revolution. They came here as refugees, and I was born shortly thereafter. And my father owned a go-kart track, and I would say go-karts, arcades, bumper boats, all that stuff. And so, quite a fun experience as a child, being able to grow up in that environment. And I can tell you, it may sound exciting, but after about 5 days of nonstop go-kart riding, kind of get bored of it. So I naturally went to the back of the shop and I saw a bunch of broken go-karts and I figured out how they work, put them back together. And my father quickly realized, okay, yeah, this kid's going to run a business one day. And so, being first generation, I don't think uh, child labor laws exist. so, he put me to work as a cashier, go-kart attendant, and of course the mechanic. And that was my first introduction to entrepreneurship. And over the years, I became very interested in cars. And so naturally, I decided to attend UT Austin and do their mechanical engineering program with an emphasis on automotive engineering, so I could design and build cars for a career. That was my passion. And I was very lucky to go to the school. Was an officer all 4 years in the Society of Automotive Engineers. Got to build the coolest cars, restos, hot rods, miniature Formula One cars, and even believe it or not, an electric. My senior thesis was for an electric AC system. This is back in 2007, so it was a little groundbreaking back then. Not anymore, but yeah, when I graduated in late '07, I wanted to work for Ford and GM. Unfortunately, they were not doing very well at that time, and they weren't hiring engineers to say the least. And so I decided to do what most engineers do when they can't find work in Texas, oil and gas, I guess. But I was very lucky to be able to join a great company, Schlumberger, doing hydraulic fracturing as a field engineer. And I was stationed out in College Station with 20 of my equipment operators, and every single day we'd get up at 3 in the morning, drive out in the middle of nowhere, and frack a wellhead. And of course, that involves a lot of heavy equipment and rigging it up. And of course, I was no stranger to get my hands dirty, living underneath the car half my life. So I rigged up with my crew, and about 9 months on the job, I lifted a heavy piece of metal the wrong way, and I hemorrhaged my L3 to my L6. And so I couldn't do that job anymore, unfortunately. And I was put into physical therapy. And one of the doctors that was treating me noticed I was very skinny for my age. Keep in mind, I was about 25 years old at the time, and I weighed about 130 pounds. So much skinnier than I am today. And uh, he tested my blood for the hormone testosterone and determined that I had a testosterone level of an 80-year-old man. And probably explained why I got injured. I didn't have the muscle mass to be able to lift these very heavy pieces of metal. And so he sent me to Baylor College of Medicine to figure out why a 25-year-old has problems like this, and determined I have a pituitary disorder. I don't create the chemical signals that tell my body to produce testosterone. And so I was put on testosterone replacement therapy. And when I was put on it, it completely changed my life. I gained more libido, stamina, endurance, motivation, ambition, and 10 pounds of muscle mass without even working out. So, I became very interested in the substances that I was taking. And I was actually getting my medication from a compounding pharmacy in Houston. And I did not have a very good experience with that compounding pharmacy. It turns out it's most compounding pharmacies, it's a pharmacist working in the back of their pharmacy, making drugs by scratch using manual processes, and which explains why the quality was subpar. It's just one pharmacist and a couple of technicians. And service took me a couple of weeks to get that prescription filled, and it was very costly. And keep in mind, I was an unemployed engineer working with his mother at the time, or living with his mother at the time. And so $400 a month was a lot of money. And working on go-karts my entire life, and cars for that matter, tend to understand a bill of materials. And it didn't make sense how glass, a little bit of water, a stopper and cap cost $400. Yeah, so decided to study the compounding industry. Went to as many conferences, seminars, and read any books on the subject. And when I thought I was ready, I decided to start my own compounding pharmacy. And so I had about $25,000 saved up from my job working at Schlumberger, and I borrowed another 25 from my mom. And I rented out a 150 square foot exam room in the back of a doctor's office and converted into a compounding pharmacy. Did all the IT work, all the finance, sales, marketing, of course, everything I think every entrepreneur has to do when they start a business from scratch. And I had my pharmacist do counseling and verification. And I concentrated on what patients would want from a compounding pharmacy, just quality, service, and cost. And this is back in 2009. This is actually what it looked like. And over the next couple of years, saved us enough money to go from 150 square feet to 1,500 square feet. And at that time, we started doing sterile compounding, making drugs to be injected into people. And I guess we did a good job because providers in the area wanted to utilize our services. So we grew from about 3 employees once we entered that space to eventually 45 when we left it. And that was hectic working 45 people on 1,500 square feet. But there were a couple events that occurred during those years, during the 2011 to 2013 years, where there was a compounding pharmacy in New England that made a mistake, did a bad batch that was contaminated with a fungus and killed 65 people and injured 700 more. And this is back in 2012. And shortly thereafter, in 2013, you had Congress pass the Drug Quality Security Act, which created a new category of drug manufacturers called outsourcing facilities that would meet, there were kind of hybrid manufacturers / compounding pharmacies that could make customized medicine without having to go through the long FDA approval process, as long as they were using FDA approved chemicals. And so we started constructing that facility. And in 2016, we opened it and we started offering both medicine for our patients and providers under the standards that Big Pharma makes, which turns out providers and patients like those kinds, like having quality medicine. But we did it with automation in mind. And so we introduced a lot of the same technology that Big Pharma uses at the pharmacy level. And at that point, we became pretty much an integrated supply chain. We can manufacture, the wholesaler, and the pharmacy all in one. And pretty much not having to deal with all the low value middlemen that cost so much money once the patient gets it. You have to think about it. Pfizer makes the drug, then they sell it to McKesson, then McKesson sells it to Walgreens. And before Walgreens can get it to you, it's got to go through Cigna and Express Scripts. And so you see, this is one of the reasons why drugs are so expensive. And we have always been a cash pharmacy. And you start to see, that's becoming much more popularized with models like Hims and Romans, where they charge a flat fee. It's transparent. The cost never goes up. And it's a subscription model. So the patient gets medicine delivered to the doorstep very conveniently using telemedicine. So that's kind of been our model. And Yep. Yeah, it's a great question. So compounding industry is about a $5 billion market, and about 1 in 10 prescriptions in this country that is dispensed is compounded. The other 9 are commercial. And so you have the total addressable market that we're currently doing, we're only serving about 2% of it. And it's a specific segment of the market that we're serving. It is the integrative health market, the health and wellness market. And what we saw over the past 13 years is that patients are taking a lot of action back into their own hands to prevent themselves from getting too sick later on in life. Because what we currently practice in this country is sick care, not health care. It's ambulatory care. You get really sick, you go to the hospital, and you have some comorbidity or disease state that's very difficult to treat, or it's too late to treat. And so what a lot of patients are doing, and providers for that matter, they are preventing these comorbidities from happening in the first place by prescribing quality of life and health and wellness medications. For example, so I got started taking men's health medication, and that includes erectile dysfunction medication, hair loss medication, medication for testosterone replacement therapy, and of course, women have a lot of these same issues as well. Female sexual hypoactive arousal disorder, menopause, of course, that requires hormone replacement, and when you're dealing with a lot of women patients, they're also dealing with dermatology, and if you're dealing with dermatology, you're probably doing a little bit of IV nutrition, and so with all these different areas, you see integrative health providers bringing them all together to treat the patient holistically and keeping them as healthy as possible, improving their quality of life, and expanding not just their lifespan, but their health span, the amount of time where they're actually healthy before they start getting sick in the last 10 years of their life. And and what we've seen especially since the pandemic, is that patients have embraced the telemedicine markets, where they can quickly use their phone or computer, get access to a provider 24 hours a day, and get consultation from a specialist, whether it's for mental health, hormone replacement, erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, dermatology, you name it. Everyone is going, you see a very large portion of these cash markets going towards telemedicine because it's easier to provide care to the patient, and the patients typically pay less than they would have if they were using their insurance. And that's kind of the model that we've been in since the beginning. The cost of our medications are so low that you don't need insurance. It's all the same price as a copay. So whether the patient has insurance or not, the provider can be assured that that patient will get their medication filled and they'll be compliant with their treatment program. And this is why we see compounding pharmacies playing a huge role in this integrative health supply chain, not just currently, but especially over the years for several reasons. One, you see a lot of these telemedicine companies offering the same exact service, so it's been commoditized at this point. And in order for them to differentiate themselves from the rest of their competitors, they are moving to compounded medications, which combine multiple active ingredients together, multiple drugs at higher strengths and potentially different dosage forms to be able to personalize that medicine for that individual patient or patient population. It's also, you also see a lot of them moving this direction because big pharma, on average, increases their prices by 11% a year. Compounding pharmacies, on average, increase their prices by less than 1% a year. And so you can be assured, the provider can be assured that a certain percentage of his or her patient population won't get priced out of the market. And they will continue to be on these therapies. And these are chronic therapies. Your body doesn't start producing hormones as you age. You start declining your hormone production. And of course, the drugs that we make improve quality of life and improve. Please. That's a great question. So it's similar to generics. What compounding pharmacies do are they make drugs that using active pharmaceutical ingredients that have already been FDA approved, and they make them in different dosage form or different dosage strength than what's commercially available, personalizing it. Yes, exactly. Yep. And so exactly. So when the provider determines that a commercial medication, a compounded medication could benefit their patients better than a commercial medication, because let's say the patient is allergic to an excipient or that medication is back ordered or has been orphaned, the compounding pharmacy will go in and make these medications at the request of a medical provider. Yeah, so exactly. Integrative clinics like that utilize compounded medicines, they send them to compounding pharmacies or outsourcing facilities like our own, and they specialize in the health and wellness market. And almost every single medicine that comes out from a health and wellness provider is compounded for the reasons that I spoke before: cost, compliance, convenience, and better outcomes. Because many are, but most are not. And uh, most providers don't deal with insurance because one, it's too difficult to get reimbursed. It also causes the provider to have to deal with prior authorizations, which is a hassle on their team. And when the medication, the compounded medication, is less expensive than a copay would be, insurance becomes unnecessary. So you're seeing a lot of these models with Hims and Romans, they don't even deal with insurance. A lot of these telemedicine companies, they will just provide a flat, affordable fee, and the patient will pay cash, get on a subscription model, and they'll have the medication delivered to the doorstep monthly or quarterly based on the treatment program. And so a little about our company and how we started. So, we started about 13 and a half years ago. And when I started the company, I wanted to, oh, please. Yep, exactly. Yep, exactly. Concierge medicine, which is cash-based medicine, a lot of the time. You see providers offering hormone replacement therapy, IV nutrition, and weight management, and all these other medications that deal with helping the patient stay healthy and not become sick. So you see a lot of these concierge practices utilizing entities like ours. And since we're licensed in all 50 states, the largest concierge practices like Centogenics, for example, they use us as their primary vendor because we can service their patients all throughout the country with a formulary of 2,600 different drugs that we manufacture across every single area of the integrative health space. And it's much more convenient for them to use a single vendor instead of shopping it out to multiple different pharmacies, making multiple different drugs, and servicing multiple different states. Yep, yep. Absolutely, exactly. That's a perfect example of when compounding pharmacy can come in handy. When drugs go on back order, and compounding pharmacies are the only other legal avenue to be able to provide access to these medications. And you see, for that drug, it's been on back order 2 years, and it's still on back order. And so patients, they can't get access to it through a traditional pharmacy. Providers can send them over to us, and we can make that drug for them. We're doing about 5 million a month in just that one drug, and so you have you have many drugs. You're making 2,600 different drugs across the entire space, so you're fairly diversified. You don't have any concentration in any single drug because you've gone over the years into so many different areas of treatment. But yeah, you see that problem even more evident in the compounding industry, where it's primarily run by pharmacists that don't really have a background in manufacturing, and they just weren't taught it in school. And so what we've seen over the years is the standards have been increasing by FDA and the state boards of pharmacy, and a certain segment of the compounding industry, the mom and pops, not being able to meet those updated standards and them getting pushed out of the market. And so you see that creates a moat and creates a higher barrier of entry for new entrants to come into the market. But at the same time, which is out existing players, which is creating consolidation events, which is causing a lot of investment in this space. And to ensure defensibility, what you have to do is you have to build advanced facilities. Put in automation, put in the same standards that big pharma uses. And since we've been at register the FDA since 2016, we've had about 8 years to learn good manufacturing practices and how to institute them, not just on our 503B, the entity that produces drugs in bulk for hospitals and institutions to administer drugs to their patients in office. But we also are the only compounding pharmacy in the country that applies those standards to our patient-specific prescriptions. And so we just opened up a new facility in 2021. It's the most advanced, largest compounding pharmacy in the country, and we're currently serving about 3 million patients out of those two facilities. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Sure, sure, sure. Mhm. Yep, yep, that's right. And you can kind of see, over the years, we've over the past 7 years, we have a 55% compound annual growth rate. And we foresee that to continue as the consolidation event continues, and more providers, especially larger providers, want to utilize compounding pharmacies that can scale along as their businesses are growing. And so just in key stats, we have 600 employees. We have a run rate about $200 million this year. Like I said, we want to, service is very important. So getting a prescription out the door very quickly is a plus for us because we have so many staff and systems to be able to do so. You also, we have our own R&D departments. We're making about 200 new drugs every single year and creating a formulary where the entire integrative health market can come to us as their one-stop shop, both to purchase their medications for their patients, but also the same medications for their office to administer to their patients, for the patients that don't want to self-administer. And so one thing that differentiates us is we are a company run by engineers, whereas the traditional company pharmacy is run by pharmacists. And so we utilize a lot of technology and automation that you traditionally only see in big pharmaceutical manufacturing companies, but at the pharmacy scale. And that is what patients and providers want. And that is what we always do. That's what we're currently on constructing our 5th facility. And that's kind of what we do. We just provide the infrastructure, the technology to the providers and the patients, and eventually they come to use us. And so that's always what we're continually raising capital for, is to upgrade our technology and facilities so that we can be the next generation of infrastructure supply chain for the pharmaceutical industry. About 3% currently, and we see ourselves growing to become about 7% over the next 4 years. And the great thing about this market is you can see 2 areas that we specialize in: hormone replacement therapy and IV nutrition. They're growing significantly, and so we couldn't even catch up with the growth rate of the industry as more and more patients become educated about these medicines. And you hear influencers like Joe Rogan in your own background always touting about how he stays strong, and bringing his own doctor, Dr. Mark Gordon, on his podcast 5 times, talking about testosterone replacement therapy. And then you see other influencers like Peter Attia and Andrew Huberman talking about health and wellness. And the base of that is IV nutrition, hormone replacement, of course, diet, sleep, exercise play important roles. But just as like when I was a kid, I couldn't gain any muscle after working out because I had no testosterone. When I got on testosterone, I just gained 10 pounds overnight. And so as people start understanding how important it is, you'll see a lot more patients converting. And once they're on these medications, since they're chronic therapies, you have a patient for the rest of your life. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have a 2% churn rate.
So what's the growth in the industry? Yeah. The growth in the industry is what, 10%? You want to grow by 20%? What's the?
Yeah, so we projected this year we're going to grow about 80% in revenue.
How much?
80%.
80. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what's the growth in the industry?
So the growth of the industry overall is about 10%. It depends on the area of treatment. You have some areas growing faster.
And this is just USA.
We do a little bit of international, but primarily USA.
Is there any value in you're in Texas, right? That's versus Canada, or?
Not really. About the U.S. makes only about 4% of the world's population, but we spend a lot of money, a lot of the world's money on drugs. And so because we've barely scratched the surface of the total addressable market in this country, we see ourselves really concentrating on the United States. But we are going to be taking advantage of some international opportunities, as there are patients all across the world that are looking for these improving their quality of life through compounded medicine and hormone replacement.
And just to clarify, how much money are you raising?
About 60 million.
60. Okay, got it. Fantastic. Great job. So we have Alan Snyder. It's a shame I don't have more time for Alan Snyder than the 25 minutes, because I'd love to hear him talk about his take on the debt markets right now, since he has. Actually, so Alan is not only. Can you switch it to view 1? So Alan is not only an expert on the debt market,